The cameras cut to the CNN studio, lights blazing with a cold intensity that seemed to magnify every glance and gesture. Across the table, Sarah Palin leaned back, smirk curling at the edge of her lips, and delivered a line dripping with condescension, a dismissive swipe meant to belittle not just her opponent, but everyone watching who dared to believe in progress. The words hung heavy in the air, daring someone to respond. And then, time seemed to slow, the studio frozen in anticipation. The narrator's voice broke through. What happened next silenced the nation. This wasn't just another cable news clash, it was a reflection of something larger, something pulsing at the heart of America's struggle with itself. On one side sat Sarah Palin, a relic of a politics that thrived on spectacle and swagger, a voice that mocked nuance and belittled difference. She embodied a strain of arrogance that dismissed immigrants, scoffed at equity, and treated democracy like a game. On the other side was Jasmine Crockett, her presence carrying the weight of lived struggle, her every word rooted in resilience and the hard-won dignity of service. To Crockett, this moment was never about a soundbite, it was about defending freedom, affirming identity, and reminding viewers that democracy only works when every voice counts. The stakes stretched far beyond the studio walls. This was about who gets to define America, those clinging to exclusion, or those demanding a seat at the table. The tension crackled, the cameras rolling as if capturing history itself. Millions leaned closer to their screens, sensing the tide of something unstoppable. But no one, neither Palin, nor the audience, nor even the anchors, expected that Crockett's next words would not just answer back. They would break the internet. Sarah Palin had long cultivated an image of defiance, the kind that drew applause from those who mistook bravado for strength. She burst onto the national stage with a wink and a quip, but as the years unfolded, the cracks in her armor became impossible to ignore. There were the infamous interviews where basic questions unraveled her, the gaffes replayed endlessly on late-night television, and the slogans that offered more flash than substance. Her critics saw in her not a visionary but a cautionary tale, proof of what happens when charisma is mistaken for competence, yet Palin never retreated. Instead, she doubled down, styling herself as the voice of a bygone America, dismissing immigrants as burdens, mocking social movements as fads, and ridiculing progressive values as though they were threats rather than aspirations. To her supporters, she was a rebel. To her detractors, she was a symbol of arrogance, an avatar of a politics that sneered at change and clung to old hierarchies, and still, she smiled, confident that charm and bravado would always shield her from accountability. But arrogance has a way of setting the stage for its own undoing. Every dismissive shrug, every mocking soundbite, every hollow laugh became another stone in the wall she built around herself. What Palin didn't know was that walls can trap as much as they protect, and that night on CNN, her fortress of swagger was about to crack, because sitting across from her was not an opponent easily rattled or dismissed. Jasmine Crockett's calm resolve stood in stark contrast to Palin's bluster, and the clash of those two energies was not just inevitable, it was destined to expose who truly held the strength. Jasmine Crockett's story was never one of shortcuts or privilege. She carved her path through grit, intellect, and a relentless commitment to justice. As a lawyer, she stood in courtrooms where the odds were stacked high against those she represented, families pushed aside, workers silenced, communities ignored. She made it her mission to speak for those who were too often spoken over. Each case was more than a job, it was a fight for dignity, a stand against a system that too easily turned its back on the marginalized. Her journey into public service was no smoother. She carried scars from battles waged against entrenched power, facing ridicule, dismissals, and attempts to quiet her voice. Yet every obstacle only sharpened her resolve, teaching her not just how to withstand pressure, but how to transform it into fuel. Crockett became a defender not only of policies, but of people, the immigrant striving for recognition, the young activist demanding fairness, the working parent insisting on respect. Her voice grew not from comfort but from struggle, each word carrying the weight of lived truth. And tonight, under the blinding CNN lights, that preparation meets its defining test. Palin leaned forward, her voice laced with sarcasm as she doubled down on her earlier jab. Each word struck like a careless dart, meant not only to bruise Jasmine Crockett but to dismiss the millions who saw themselves in her. She painted progress as weakness, mocked the very idea of inclusivity, and laughed as though cruelty were wit. The smirk never left her face, every gesture screaming condescension, but Crockett didn't flinch. Her hands rested steady, her gaze unbroken, her silence charged with an energy that felt almost electric. It was the stillness of a coiled spring, the calm before a storm that everyone sensed was building. The contrast was striking. Palin louder, sharper, desperate to dominate the stage, while Crockett radiated a quiet strength that refused to be rattled. The moderators exchanged glances, the tension thick enough to cut. Viewers at home felt it too, the unmistakable shift in atmosphere as arrogance collided with restraint. Palin's words grew harsher, her confidence bordering on recklessness, but Crockett's composure only deepened the suspense. The audience leaned forward, waiting. Because they knew, as surely as history has patterns, that calm silence often precedes the loudest thunder. The barrage from Palin reached its peak, a crescendo of mockery, laced with the certainty that the louder she spoke, the stronger she appeared. For a moment, it seemed as though her voice might drown out everything else. But then, Crockett shifted. Just slightly. She leaned forward, eyes fixed, a subtle breath escaping her lips. And when she spoke, her words cut through the noise like steel slicing silk. Her tone was calm, deliberate, but charged with an intensity that made the room still. She didn't rush. She let each phrase land, her timing flawless, her clarity undeniable. The sentence, the one that would replay across millions of screens, emerged not as a shout but as a statement of truth, firm enough to shake the very foundation Palin stood on, and the reaction was instantaneous. A gasp rippled across the studio, sharp and collective, like a single breath being stolen from the audience. Cameras caught the flicker in Palin's eyes, the brief stutter in her smirk, the collapse of certainty on her face. The cutaway shots revealed anchors frozen mid-expression, as if unsure whether they had just witnessed debate or history, and then came the silence. Not the awkward kind, but the charged, reverent pause that follows revelation. Crockett's words didn't need an echo, they carried their own gravity. It wasn't just a rebuttal. It wasn't just a counterpoint. It was a reckoning. The narrator's voice carried over the stunned quiet. This was more than politics. This was truth, spoken with the force of a generation that refuses to be dismissed. In that instant, the power shifted. Palin's dominance crumbled, her bravado suddenly hollow in the face of conviction. And Crockett, steady, unshaken, had delivered a line that would not just define the night, but ignite a firestorm beyond the studio walls. The silence inside the studio was broken not by Palin, not by the moderators, but by the world beyond the cameras. Within seconds, Crockett's line was clipped, shared, and unleashed onto social media. Twitter erupted first, hashtags surged to the top of trending lists, hashtag Crockett clapback, hashtag truth wins, hashtag mic drop moment. Timelines filled with disbelief, awe, and celebration. Memes appeared almost instantly, Palin frozen mid-smirk, captioned with Crockett's devastating retort. TikTok stitched the moment into 1,000 variations, reactions of people gasping, cheering, even replaying the line in slow motion, each version amassing millions of views within hours. Commentators scrambled to keep pace. On late-night shows, hosts replayed the clip with thunderous applause from live audiences. News outlets framed it as the exchange that defined the debate, while political analysts debated its lasting impact. Celebrities chimed in, tweeting praise, some calling Crockett a legend in real time. Politicians added their voices, progressives lauding her composure, even rivals grudgingly acknowledging the sheer impact of the moment. The ripple effect stretched far beyond politics. It became a cultural flashpoint, a shorthand for dignity triumphing over arrogance. For those who had felt dismissed, ignored, or silenced, Crockett's words became more than a line, they became a banner. And the world, it seemed, couldn't stop repeating it, and so it will be remembered, not as just another televised clash, but as the night Jasmine Crockett destroyed Sarah Palin with one viral line that echoed far beyond the studio walls. A single moment of clarity turned into a movement, proof that truth still has the power to cut through noise. If you believe in truth over arrogance, in dignity over mockery, then share this moment, carry it forward, and let it speak for you too. Subscribe, comment, and join the movement, because this story isn't finished. Together, we decide how the next chapter is written.